But first to Erika, Chief Executive of the South African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. It's called SAVCA. Erika, there's just so much money swishing around in the world of private equity. Where's it all coming from?
Hi, Bruce. It might be overstating it, but the good news is that global financial sector confidence has returned, and we're seeing the evidence of that through the successful fundraisers that the South African private equity funds have announced. The most notable perhaps being Ethos at the beginning of this year. It closed an 8 billion rand fund. That's their sixth private equity fund since their establishment about 3 decades ago. Since then, we've seen Capital Works, 2.7 billion rand, and this week, Convergence Partners, the ICT specialist fund, announcing a fund of about 1.5 billion rand.
Okay, but it's a lot of money, and it's probably sitting at record levels. I can't imagine there's been a time in the past where we've been sitting with this much private equity capital around to make acquisitions.
We still aren't quite at the pre-crisis level when it was a record level. So as I say, it's still a recovery in confidence, but this certainly is an indication of the interest in and the appetite for the South African and the African market. And the funds are being raised from both the local markets, so local pension funds, local development finance institutions, a government employee pension fund, as well as offshore funds, so in the same categories, pension funds and DFIs.
When one looks at it, one would think that there'd be lots of private equity money around in difficult times, when assets were cheap, when markets weren't sitting at record levels. This seems to be a bit of a contradiction when it comes to private equity investors who like a good deal, looking for a good deal.
Well, I agree with you. Private equity investors, I would categorize them as value investors. They're always looking to buy at the right price and identifying assets where they can add value and generate better returns for their investors. So looking for that perfect deal, the industry sector, its placement there, and also the management team. But a lot of it depends on the cycle. So you have a fundraising cycle. Those funds then deploy through buying assets. And this is more or less where we are in the current South African fundraising or the investment cycle, that it's now the fundraising point. And from here, we'll see deployment of the capital through acquisition of deals. And they certainly are finding the deals.
Where are those deals, Erika?
Well, Bruce, it's more or less across the board. And it's, to a large extent, it depends on the mandate of the funds. So many of the funds in South Africa still are generalist funds. So they'd be finding deals across industry sectors, whether it's retail, financial sector, manufacturing, other industrial sectors, mining services. And more and more of them, though, are specializing. So we're seeing a trend towards specializing in the area of infrastructure. Around a third of funds raised have gone to infrastructure. So seeking to fill the funding gap there in South Africa and Pan-African markets. And then anecdotally, we're hearing from the lawyers who are setting up some of these new funds that there's an appetite for even greater specialization, and we'll see that in funds specializing, for instance, in healthcare, agriculture, and ICT.
Good news. Erika, thank you, Chief Executive of SAVCA, the South African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association.